Hello everyone and welcome to another comic book video. Today we're going to be talking about DC's New 52. So back in 2011, DC decided to do a whole company-wide reboot and revamping of their characters and their stories and everything to go with that. So what they did was they had a comic book event called Flashpoint, and one of the effects of Flashpoint was it kind of rebooted the entire DC universe. So what they did as a company-wide thing is they canceled all their titles and they went all back to #1. So they reintroduced all the same series. But at this time, some of the series like Action Comics and Batman and Detective Comics had actually reached very high numbers. For instance, like Action Comics was getting up into like the 900s, and so they just decided to just go ahead and just reboot everything, go back to doing #1 issues as both a way to try and do something different with some of these characters that have been around for decades, but also just as a way to try and refresh and do different things as well. And now it wasn't a complete reboot. Certain storylines were still mentioned or were still part of the overall new 52 universe. For instance, some of the Batman storylines like Death in the Family and Killing Joke still existed. With Green Lantern, you had a lot of the work that Geoff Johns had done, the titles such as the Sinestro Corps War and stuff like that was still remained. But overall, it was mostly just an attempt to just try and do refresh. So I brought in some of the #1s that came out around this time when the New 52 began. So the first one I have is Action Comics #1, which honestly this is probably going to be the closest I ever get to owning an Action Comics #1. But this is just a relaunch of Superman. It introduced Superman in his very early days when he was just starting to be a superhero and his crime fighting and stuff. As you notice, the costume's a little different. He's wearing like jeans and stuff. This was like early days before he became more or less as we considered Superman. So that's the first issue. Next one I have is Batman #1. This is the premiere issue of Batman for the New 52. This also was the start of Scott Snyder's run on Batman as well. He'd actually done some issues of Detective Comics before the New 52, but this is when he was given the title, the Batman title, and he pretty much would stay with it through the New 52 and stuff. But it was also a very popular run, one of the most iconic runs possibly on Batman. Throughout the series, he introduced some new villains such as the Court of Owls, so it was just a very popular run. But besides this being an issue, a #1 issue, it also had the first cameo of Harper Row, who would go on to become Bluebird. So that's. Next one I have is Green Lantern #1. Now the Green Lantern titles for the most part were not affected so much by the New 52. A lot of the stuff that had come previously actually stayed in the New 52 universe. One of the storylines that kind of picked up from previously before Flashpoint that carried on in New 52 was having Sinestro rejoin the Green Lantern Corps. Of course, Sinestro was one of the big villains. He used a yellow powering that was fueled by fear, but for a very brief time period he did rejoin the Green Lantern Corps, and this was the first issue there where it starts with his brief tenure returning to the Green Lantern Corps. And the final issue I have is Nightwing #1. This was actually the debut of a brand new costume. So of course with the revamp and reboot, Nightwing kind of stayed the same. There was some little bit carryover, some changes, but for the most part Nightwing kind of stayed what came previously. So just that brand new costume. So, and that's everything I have for today. If you like this video, just hope you go ahead and give it a like, and I will see you next time.